One of my favorite elements of Ready or Not is that it always seems to subvert our expectations. We'll look at what information is available at the start of the mission, form some ideas or conclusions, and more often than not, by the end of everything, the picture becomes much darker than we could have ever imagined. Now personally, I've always really appreciated this approach, because it seems like regardless of what happens, there's always something in these levels that surprises me. Seeing as this is a game about murder, cults, and sex trafficking though, these surprises are seldom good. In fact, more often than not, they're presented as these twisted reveals towards the end of most levels. And some of them are so severe that they make you contemplate why you're even playing this game. Now, most of these situations are created through the use of false appearances. A nice winery out in the country is secretly harboring a cult with a hidden torture chamber. A pretty mansion up in the Hollywood Hills is actually a hub for a child pornography ring. The initial appearances of these environments lulls you into a false sense of security, only before ripping it away right at the end of the level. But there's actually another map that does this same sort of thing, just in a different kind of way. Rather than fool you with its appearance, it instead deliberately feeds you false information, leading to one of the most surprising and horrible discoveries that we'll make in this game. So please, by all means, make yourself comfortable, grab yourself something to drink, and accompany me as we investigate 23 megabytes a second. Now, our mission here revolves around a man named Michael Williams, a popular online streamer who goes under the username Milky Toes. Yeah. Anyways, Michael actually has quite a large following and seems to be doing relatively alright for himself. But for whatever reason, one day he snaps. Michael calls the LSPD emergency line, stating that he's killed his mother and that he plans on killing his brother before killing himself. He also reveals his location to the dispatcher before abruptly hanging up and leaving us with no further information. Now, although it's not blatantly expressed in our briefing, through the details that we've been provided, the game is actually suggesting that this might be a fake call. After all, if you really were dead set on killing your family and then yourself, why would you ever call the police and let them know? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But then when you throw in the fact that Michael is a very popular online streamer, it becomes obvious that this is a swatting incident. Now, I'm sure that most of you watching this channel are already quite familiar with the concept of swatting, but just in case, I'd like to offer you guys a quick refresher. Swatting occurs when a person learns the address of another online and dials in a fake emergency call that leads to an armed police presence arriving at the target's doorstep. It's a really slimy and scummy tactic that's typically used against online creators as a way of harassing them. There are even instances of this turning deadly, because police are operating under the context that they're encountering a violent murderer when in fact all that they're really dealing with is a harmless streamer. And although none of this is explicitly stated in our briefing, this call and the context of the situation leads us to believe that. Upon our arrival to the scene, we'll notice that there are two different routes that we can pursue. We can either walk through the main entrance or use a small tucked away stairway off to the side. Now, I imagine that most players probably use the main entryway, so for the sake of clarity here, I'm going to use that route too. Interestingly, as we head through this area, we'll actually start to come across some armed resistance, although none of these men appear to be Michael. This not only contradicts what we've been told verbatim, but it also goes against what the context has led us to believe. As the player, we were coming in here with the impression that this would be a simple misunderstanding, but after being fired upon by several different people, it becomes clear that this situation is much more complex than that. Now, unlike some of our other missions, these guys don't seem to be too heavily armed. They're shooting at us with fairly typical weapons, and all of them are wearing street clothes. So even though this situation is a bit more hectic than we bargained for, it's not really at risk of going too sideways yet. When we make our way up onto the second level of the apartment complex, we'll actually find that one of the room's doors is open, and if we peek our head in to investigate, we'll uncover a massive server farm. likely being used as a Bitcoin mining operation. Now, I'm not too well versed in crypto at all, so if somebody would like to elaborate for me on this, that would be great. But I'm not entirely sure of the legality behind this. Sure, it does look incredibly shady, but I'm not 100% certain if it's actually illegal. But I mean, if that's the case, why else would you be guarding it with a bunch of armed goons? Regardless though, it would seem that Michael is actually renting various apartments in this complex, and he's using some of them for rather shady purposes. All we can really do in the moment here is report this and keep moving forward. Once we work our way further upstairs, we'll encounter a few more enemies, but once we deal with them, we'll find ourselves in front of another apartment at the end of the hall. This room would appear to belong to Michael's mother, and when we finish clearing it, that suspicion is confirmed. We actually find Michael's mom alive and well, solidifying the fact that this was all initially just a swatting. Evidently, one of Michael's fans hated him to the point where they were willing to fake a police call and pretend that he had murdered someone. But now that we're here and actually looking around, it's starting to seem like this swatting may have been a good thing, because Michael is very obviously up to no good here. After all of this though, we only have one final apartment to clear, Michael's. Now, typically this is the most hectic section of this map, so we really need to be careful. After breaching the door and making our way inside, we'll find ourselves in a gunfight with most of the occupants. But if we're smart enough to toss in a flashbang or some tear gas, suddenly this situation becomes much more manageable. Inside, we'll find Michael's brother, who is also still alive, as well as Michael himself. Based on his appearance, it would seem that he was in the middle of his stream right when we arrived. But anyways, now that we have him and everyone else apprehended, we can finally begin to search around his apartment for clues. Now, the apartment itself is a fully converted gamer dungeon, complete with posters, anime figurines, and all sorts of other questionable things. In the kitchen, we can find some notes that have been left on the fridge, including a list of passwords and a to-do list. Now, everything on here seems pretty typical, aside from one line, which reads, "Hook up friend with photos." Now, at the moment, we can't really say for certain what this note is referring to, but knowing this game, I really don't like where this is going. In the living room, we'll find that the TV has been turned to a site called BoobTube, and on it, we can see that Michael has been watching a couple of Let's Plays. Behind the couch, we can also find a small QR code that, when scanned by your phone, takes you to one of the game artist's Instagram pages, who, just by comparing the scenes here, seems to be the person that did all of this crazy cool wall art. So that's kind of a nice touch. Also, I don't know if these can be found in any of the other levels, but here we can also find where the Ready or Not devs have made these little bobbleheads of themselves and hidden them at different points throughout this level, which I thought was kind of neat. Continuing onward though, we can finally make our way into Michael's streaming room, which is also the place where things start to rapidly go downhill. Almost immediately in front of us when we walk in is a table filled with illegal photos of minors. Based on these pictures, it would seem that Michael, or someone he's affiliated with, has been covertly watching children and taking revealing pictures of them when they aren't expecting it, which is just sickening. In a nearby dresser, we'll find another stash of these photos, and here we're given the opportunity to actually call in and report what we're seeing. If we take a look at the nearby computer, we can see that Michael was, in fact, right in the middle of his stream when he got swatted. Funnily enough, we can see ourselves on his face cam, and if we really want to, we can even read his stream chat as it goes along. And it all reads out just about as well as you would expect it to, with some of the users typing F to pay respects. Some of the other comments also shed a bit of light on Michael's public image, with some saying, "LOL, resist and get shot. You deserve it, pervert." And it's about time, to be honest. The amount of shit this guy speaks. Was wondering when someone would get sick of him in his comments. So based just on this, it seems that Michael is already sort of known as a sleazy predator amongst his fan base, and one of these followers must have gotten sick of what they were hearing online and decided to make that fake call to police. Now, I'm not too sure if there's such thing as an ethical swatting, but here it seems like it's panned out pretty well, as this fake call has led us to uncovering some truly horrific crimes. On the other monitor, we can see that Michael was also right in the middle of messaging someone on Discord. And here we'll see that he's been sharing those photos of the exploited children. Even worse though, he references a specific server that's being privately hosted by the company MindJot, and he says that there are even more pictures of kids there. Now this fact is obviously unsettling because it would mean that there's a much larger child exploitation ring going on here, and that even the large tech companies of Los Sueños might be in on it. But for right now, I don't want to say anything for certain, as there simply isn't enough evidence to draw that conclusion yet. After reading and reporting this though, we can end the mission and head back to the station, where we can investigate some of the recovered evidence. Now, the only real pertinent piece of information that we have is the HRX Jot miner. It's described as being a Bitcoin miner created by MindJot that was distributed to a few content creators. This was made in conjunction with a Bitcoin scam, which targeted these creators' audiences as a way of making some easy money. It would appear that these guys were attempting the same sort of crypto schemes that are so prevalent with creators today. But more importantly, this small piece of evidence suggests that Michael and the MindJot organization have some sort of relationship with each other. And unfortunately, this leads me to believe that the people at the company are willing participants in what Michael has been doing. With this, it's obvious that the issue of exploited children goes much deeper than this, and we can only wonder where this storyline will take us next. What initially started as a simple fake call to police quickly morphed into a horrific storyline that will continue throughout the rest of this game. When we initially rolled up to the apartment complex, we could have never expected that this is what we would uncover. This is literally the second mission of the game, and it immediately shows us that no matter how ready we think we are for something, we're not. The title of the game is starting to make sense now, but I just think it's killer game design when you can sneak a twist like this in and completely blindside the player. It keeps our experiences feeling fresh, and it builds an anticipation of what might happen next. But I'd love to hear your thoughts though. Is this effective level design, or is it a bit overkill? How much do you hate Michael Williams on a scale of 1 to 10? Be sure to let me know down in the comments below. I'd also like to take just a quick second to shout out all of my badass patrons and channel members. Cosmonaut, Asterix762, Zaw, CrankyBox99, Atomic Renegade, SR Renegade, Dangun, Caillou, Alexander, Neostank, and Tori Hunter. You guys are the absolute best, and your support literally helps keep this channel alive, so thank you. But with all of that stuff being said, thank you so much for taking the time to watch today's video. You know I love you. I'm out.